All right. Thank you all for joining us. We're thrilled to welcome you to the 10th program in our Judaica Project lecture series. In these monthly Zoom sessions on Judaica, Jewish art, and what these mean to you, speakers present a different type of or topic related to Judaica or Jewish art in order to prompt discussion with and among the audience. Attendees are invited to ask questions and share their own experiences at the end of this session. This series is a collaboration with the Peter C. Harold House for Jewish Life at Quinnipiac University and is made possible by a generous grant from the Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven. This evening, Judaic artist and graphic designer Jeanette Kuvin Oren is going to share her work with us. A graduate of Princeton and Yale universities, Jeanette completed a master's degree in public health and most of her PhD in epidemiology before devoting herself to full-time to Judaic commissioned art and graphic design. Since 1984, Jeanette has created installation pieces for more than 400 houses of worship, schools, community centers, and camps around the world. She specializes in glass, mosaic, metal, fiber art, calligraphy, paper cutting, and painting. Jeanette makes Torah covers, art curtains, donor recognition art, huppot, ketubot, wall hangings, and many other items for homes and institutions. Jeanette works with architects, professional and volunteer committees, fabricators, families, and institutions who commission her art. Jeanette designed the United States Postal Service 2022 to 2024 Hanukkah stamp, which you have probably seen. Thank you so much, Jeanette, for doing this with us.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here. And since we're a pretty small group, I encourage you to ask any questions. And I'm thrilled to be here. We've lived in New Haven 28 years, and we're moving in 2 weeks. So this is the end of an era for me. And well, I'll talk about something I did for New Haven a few years ago, and it'll be like a full circle evening. So what I'd like to do, I know a lot of you and you know me, but I'm going to run through an overview of my work, how it metamorphosized into what I do today, commissioned art for synagogues all over the world. And I really want to leave lots of time for questions. And so apologies for racing through a slideshow, but I think it'll give you a good overview of my work. So let me just hang on a second. I'm going to get the slideshow going. Hold on. Okay. Can you see the full screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So there we go. So I grew up in Palm Beach, Florida, when there were no Jews. And my dad was the local doctor, and my parents wanted us to know about being Jewish, but we didn't know any Jewish kids. They were Zionists, and my parents really enhanced our lives because we went to Israel every summer. My dad was able to close his Palm Beach practice because in those days, nobody lived in Palm Beach during the summer. He closed his practice and we lived in Jerusalem every summer. And this is me at my bat mitzvah. I'm the one holding the Torah. And this is still a very active congregation in Jerusalem, Harel Synagogue. I made the Torah cover with my mom. And I didn't even remember that I had made it with my mom until a couple of years ago. But obviously, I love to do art. My mom and I did it as a project, but I didn't know that that would be the beginning of my career. So I thought I was going to have a career in public health. And I went to undergrad, then I came here for my MPH, Master in Public Health, and then my PhD. I started, and then I met Dan Oren, who was, I think, your last speaker. And he's well known to the Historical Society of New Haven. And Dan and I met in 1984. We've been married ever since. And my career took a turn because I made our ketubah when we got married. And Rabbi Ponet at Yale said, I can refer you to other people to make their ketubot. That's Jewish marriage contract. And that's literally how I got started. You can see here, Dan and I getting ready to sign our ketubah. And one thing led to another, and I started making ketubot for other people. And this is Adam Kligfeld. He grew up here in New Haven and is now rabbi at a large congregation in Los Angeles. This is Adam and his wife, Avi, looking at their ketubah that I made for them, I don't know, 25 years ago, maybe. So everything that I make is custom designed for the couple getting married. And in Adam and Javi's case, their ketubah was inspired by their names, Adam and Eve. So you see behind the ketubah text, a Garden of Eden, which I painted in watercolor. Then I did the calligraphy of the ketubah text. And then I designed a paper cut and cut it out.
Got that.
Wow. I dyed the fabric that goes behind the paper cut. Anyone who's not on mute, it might be helpful to mute your screens. That would be great. And then the final thing I do is I decorate around the paper cutting with gouache paint, which is a kind of a watercolor paint. So you can see it's all personalized and very customized. Here's another example of a ketubah. It says, Ani l'dodi v'dodi li at the top. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. This couple loved pear trees. So you can see the pear trees and Jerusalem. Again, completely personalized for them. And this couple wanted Persian design. So I was inspired by a Persian carpet that I saw. And the text here is all in Aramaic. Sometimes people want the translation, sometimes they don't. But again, it's whatever they'd like. This couple met, guess where, in Sydney, Australia. And so their ketubah is the Sydney Opera House, and then personal symbols around the paper cut to depict who they were when they got married. And then the silk is hand dyed in my studio. This couple met and then got married at a camp. So I wanted to depict the camp, and then the ketubah text makes up the dock on which they got engaged. Here they are signing their ketubah with their friends and their parents. And it's just a really personal thing that they have in their home for the rest of their lives that they pass on to their children. I also make ketubot using fabric. And this is a paper cut ketubah, but then fabric around it. So it's like a quilt, and then I cut out the center and then expose the paper cut and the text. Here's another example of a fabric ketubah. I also do paper cutting, not just ketubot, but paper cutting in general. So when Bethel in Hartford wanted to honor donors to a fundraising project years ago, everybody received a print of this paper cut. So it's a way to both use it as fundraising, but also to depict, in this case, Bethel's ark and their sanctuary in a paper cut. The Center for Jewish Life at Princeton also was doing a fundraiser, and they commissioned this paper cut, and everybody who gave a certain amount toward a campaign received a print. And of course, the school colors are orange and black, so the silk is dyed in the colors of the school. I make family trees. I know a lot of people are interested in genealogy, and it gets harder as you get more relatives or you find out about more relatives. But if you can keep it to a certain number of generations and a certain size, then I can make a beautiful family tree. Now, Dan, my husband, is really into genealogy, so his family tree would be very hard to depict in an artistic way, but this is really fun to organize and make family trees for families. And more I'm doing them on the computer and then doing a watercolor painting behind it, and you can include photos also, which is fun. So technology has really expanded what we can do to make a decorative family tree. Since about 30 years ago, I've really become known for the Torah covers and fiber art that I make. I've worked with about 400 synagogues all over the world. And most of what I do, I would say about 80% of my work is Torah covers. So a synagogue will commission a set of Torah covers, and we discuss what the design is going to be, how it's going to match the sanctuary, what the themes are, and the quotations that might be used. So I'll just show you a few examples. This was the first set that I made. It was for the synagogue we belong to in Bethesda, Maryland, and it depicts the 7 days of creation. This set of Torah covers was featured on the calendar for United Synagogue. And that led to my being commissioned by many, many congregations. And that's sort of how everything got launched. And this was obviously 1994. So that's how long I've been making Torah covers. The Jewish Theological Seminary saw the calendar, commissioned me to make the art curtain and the Torah covers for the renovated Women's League Sanctuary, which is still this is still what it looks like at the Jewish Theological Seminary. The theme of the art curtain is, and the bush was not consumed, which is the theme of the logo for JTS. And also I made great effort to match the stained glass, which is behind the ark. The stained glass artist, by the way, Jean-Jacques Duval, is the same artist who made the stained glass at B'nai Jacob and at Mishkan Israel in Hamden. So some Torah covers depict themes from the high holidays, like this set for Or Kodesh in Chevy Chase, white, gold, silvers, and that's traditional for the high holidays. And then some synagogues have a lot of Torahs, like Emmanuel Synagogue in West Hartford. And this is how the Torahs look in their ark. It's a long panorama of one tree, and different themes of Jewish life are written out inside the tree. So like Chesed, Mitzvot, Eshet Chayil, Bracha. So that was what the committee decided on. And the silk is hand dyed by me in a gradation, so that it goes from dark blue up to like a sky blue on all of them. This ark in St. Louis, the glass is supposed to be like water. And so the theme of the Torah covers is like a spring rolling down the hills in the Judean desert. And this was really fun to do because it was a different style. There's a detail of the Torah covers for Shari Emeth in St. Louis. And this synagogue in Dayton wanted something very different. They wanted an abstract design. It's a bit of a burning bush or a tree of life, but it does go with their stained glass, and it's something very abstract. So each congregation wants a different look to their Torah covers. And this synagogue in Fire Island wanted something natural and that would remind them of the dunes outside their synagogue. When Central Synagogue commissioned these a few years ago, they wanted me to match the decor of their portable ark that they take to Carnegie Hall, I think, for the high holidays. So I had to match the design that's on their ark. So very abstract and contemporary and very fitting for their own ark. I've been commissioned by Tree of Life Synagogue several times to make Torah covers over the years. There were a few, and then we added another. They all match the stained glass that's in the sanctuary. And in 2018, after the murders at Tree of Life, a group of cantors commissioned a Torah and a Torah cover. And this is the Torah cover that goes with that Torah. And it's only used on Rosh Chodesh. And the theme is the prayers for Rosh Chodesh. And the stars depict the 11 victims, the 11 murder victims of that shooting. And the river which looks a lot like the stained glass that's in the sanctuary, is supposed to be like reminding us of the stones that the community bring to a cemetery that everybody marks when they go to a cemetery. So there are a lot of themes in this Torah cover. And before COVID, it was being used to go around to schools and teach about anti-Semitism and what is Judaism. And is a really meaningful project. This synagogue in Prague was an amazing experience because the rabbi on the right grew up in Prague and in the Reform movement and then became the rabbi. And this Torah was rescued from the Holocaust, used in the United States for 4 decades, and then returned to Czech Republic to be used by a synagogue there. So there's a lot of meaning, and they commissioned me to make the cover for it. Here they are dancing with it at their dedication of the Torah. So I also make art curtains. This is a curtain for synagogue in Gainesville. And you can see that I worked very hard to make sure it goes with the stained glass. And that was, the goal is to work with the committee to make sure that they're happy with the design, and then to make the finished product look just like the design that they approved. So this is a different synagogue in New York City. This is actually one of the oldest synagogues in America. Abraham Lincoln visited this synagogue. It's an Orthodox congregation in Lower Manhattan. And they wanted something modern, yet something that would go with their old building. And in Santiago, Chile, this is a very large art curtain for a very modern, large synagogue there. And it matches the stained glass in that sanctuary. When Chizuk Emunah in Baltimore commissioned this art curtain, it's a very different style. It's supposed to depict the giving of the Torah at Sinai. And I make this as if you're making a watercolor painting on a large piece of silk, and then I quilt it. So it's a very different technique. This is a detail of it. A lot of fun and something I don't do often, this kind of painterly look. This is one of the first commissions I ever got from Sutton Place Synagogue, and this is their art curtain. It's supposed to be the Lion's Gate of Jerusalem. And when you open this curtain, there is an array. This is the curtain. It's large, as you can see. And there is an array of a panorama of scenes from the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem. All the Torah covers are meant to evoke the Jewish quarter. That was a really fun project, and that was a long time ago. Now, I'll talk just briefly about wall hangings. You can see I dye all the fabric myself, and I do all the sewing myself. One of the first projects I did when we moved back to New Haven in 1996 was Murray Lender commissioned a piece of art for the new JCC in Woodbridge. And he asked if I would make a piece of art that would be about the history of Jewish New Haven. Now, I had gone to graduate school here, but I didn't know New Haven at all. And I spent a year, thanks to Murray, doing the research on what would go on this wall hanging. He left the medium up to me, and I wanted to do a piece of fiber art. So if you've been to the JCC, you've seen this. It took a year of research. I literally interviewed families that had businesses in New Haven, politicians, people from every synagogue, and every synagogue is depicted. Everything I could think of. I went through phone books, Oak Street, Legion Avenue. All those businesses I found on maps in the New Haven Historical Society. So it was an enormous amount of work, but what a great way to get to know New Haven and a lot of the older families in New Haven. So it was a great project. I can't believe I did it because it just took forever. But it was, and every little house, every little building is made out of fabric. and paint and dye and pen and ink. And then it's a large quilt. But it's very factual also. Now, after that, people came up and said, you know, you forgot my family and you forgot my grandfather's store. I couldn't do every single thing, but I really did try to make sure everybody was included. So it was a labor of love, and it's still there, and it didn't get damaged in the fire, so that's good. So not long after the New Haven project was commissioned, I was commissioned by Agudas Shalom in Stamford to make a wall hanging in memory of their janitor. He had been at the synagogue as long as the rabbi, and his name was Rosie. So this is a midrash about a rose, about light and the creation of the world. And it's a 24-foot wall hanging in memory of Rosie that hangs in their sanctuary. Again, all fiber art, dyed and sewn here in my studio. And this is another wall hanging. The fabric is all dyed, and I dye it here, and I sew it and assemble it here in my studio. Let me just show you. Last year, I made this wall hanging for Young Israel in Scarsdale, and this will show you, hopefully, yeah, there we go. When I do a really large project, I have to work on the floor because it's so long, the fabric. So I protect the floor with plastic, and you can see I'm just on my hands and knees dyeing it. Silk is great because you don't need chemicals to dye silk. You dye this, let it dry, and then you have to use a steamer to set the silk. But you don't have to use toxic chemicals. So I really like dyeing silk. So that's how I dye the fabric. And this is the finished wall hanging. It's 200 inches wide by 30 inches high, and it hangs in the sanctuary in Young Israel of Scarsdale. So huppot, another fiber art thing for Jewish families, are one of the fun things I get to make. This is a paper cut chuppah made out of fabric. The fabric is ultra suede with a sheer background. And then some of the huppot I make are dyed or painted silk that I quilt, like this one. Or a family tree. You can put photographs of family members on fabric now and incorporate that into the family tree chuppah, and it can be a wall hanging in between weddings. Here's the paper cut style chuppah at B'nai Jacob. That's my daughter and son-in-law. This is now our family heirloom chuppah. So my other daughter used it a year ago, exactly. And this is a detail of the family chuppah. It's a paper cut, but made out of fabric. And I also design glass and metal and mosaic and donor recognition, and I hire people to fabricate them for me. So I design the doors, and then a fabricator will make the doors and make the glass design. Like this one for Temple Beth Shalom in Needham. This is not etched glass. It's a photo on film, and the film is adhered to the glass, and it looks like etching. This is how you see store windows these days. Etching isn't really done that often anymore, but the film is very common. And I also design so that the metal doors can be cut with a CNC machine, like these arc doors for synagogue in St. Louis. And then I made the Torah covers so you see them through the arc doors, the colors. This is a glass arc in Virginia. And since they commissioned me to make both the arc and the Torah covers, I made sure they work together. And sometimes I'm commissioned to make donor walls, like I did with Gary Rosenthal for this synagogue in Boston. The names of the donors are on the river of glass, and then the 7 species are in the tree made of metal around the river. you see some details there. Sadly, Gary Rosenthal, who was a wonderful Judaic artist, he died last year, way too young. And he was just a good friend and a wonderful artist. I've been doing mosaics for about 25 years, and I work with a mosaic artist named Stephen Mioto. If you have been to LaGuardia or the subways in New York or any major airport in the world, Stephen is the mosaic artist who does the mosaics. He's the fabricator, and other people design the mosaics. So I make a design and he makes the mosaic out of smalti, which is a little Italian stone. And he's just the most amazing mosaic fabricator. This is a mosaic wall at Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School that honored people who gave to the building. This is in the lower school. Terrible picture, but you can see some of the detail. And then this is when we were working on a project last year. This is how it is assembled in his studio before he puts the grout in. Here's a detail of his work in his studio and my sketch below it. He's just a master craftsman, an amazing mosaic artist. And finally, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Hanukkah stamp. So the US Postal Service has a committee that searches for artists, and they found me because they liked a wall hanging they saw on my website. This is the wall hanging. It was a design for an arch door for a synagogue in Medford, Massachusetts. Obviously, this menorah is 7 branches, but they asked me, could I make a variation on it that's 8 or 9 branches, 8 candles for Hanukkah and the Shamash. So I redesigned it. And this is actually the wall hanging I was working on for Medford, but this shows you how it looks in real life. And this is how I made the Hanukkah stamp. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. This is just going to, so I sketched it. I then dyed the silk in my studio. And after the silk is dyed and steamed, then it dries for a few days. And then I piece it like you're piecing a small quilt. In this case, it was a tiny quilt. And actually made this while we were in my Israeli studio. And then I added the black lines to look like stained glass. And I do that with ultra suede and a paper cutting technique. Here I am ironing it temporarily in place, and then I'll sew it after it's in place. So I do what's called free motion quilting. So I'm just, kind of drawing, painting with the thread. That's me in my Israeli studio. And then the stamp came out. The hardest part was I wasn't allowed to tell anyone for 2 years. And that was really frustrating, but it was when it was revealed in 2022, I learned about first day covers and cachets. I was encouraged to make a hand-painted design that would become sort of a memento for collectors of stamps. So I learned a lot about stamp collecting, and I made these first day covers, and I hand-painted them. And people who collect stamp really love first day covers, especially if they're hand-painted. So here I'm just hand painting the design. It would become like a limited edition. I only made 200 of these. And then Dan and I were invited to the dedication ceremony in Ohio. And why Ohio? The only reason they had it in Ohio was because the USPS had been criticized for having too many on the East Coast to West Coast. They had to have it in the middle of America, and they just randomly picked a synagogue in suburban Ohio. So we drove out there because this was COVID still. And we had an amazing experience. This is like a slice of American life that I knew nothing about. People come from all over the country to these first day ceremonies. So at the first day ceremony, they have employees from the Postal Service canceling the first day covers, and people line up to purchase them and to collect them. And so these are the first day covers, and they have a stamp with a dreidel on it. And it's just such a great experience. They really make a big deal of these ceremonies, and they're about 30 a year. And people go all over the country, some in their RVs, going from ceremony to ceremony. And they, as the artist, they wanted me to sign the program and sign different memorabilia for collectors. And people come with their collections, like this older man on the right. He had a collection of Judaic American stamps, and the first day covers that go with it. And he was really proud of showing that to me. And I spoke, and local politicians came. It was just it was a wonderful experience. My daughters surprised me and showed up. And then finally, this past about a year ago, I was asked by a TV production company owned by Brigham Young University, Mormons, to if they could make a documentary about my work. There's a beautiful series online called Artful, and they make documentaries about 15 minutes long about artists all over the world whose work is inspired by religion and faith. And they made a beautiful documentary. They came and spent 2 days here with me and Dan, and we got to know this Mormon film crew. And they filmed me in my studio, making art, talking about art. They were so interested in Judaism. And the result is a beautiful 15-minute documentary. They came to B'nai Jacob. They said they'd never seen a more beautiful sanctuary than the chapel. And it was a great experience. Dan and I had such a good time, and they were so taken with the story I had to tell about my mother being born in Germany and my grandparents surviving the Holocaust, that became a lot of the focus of the documentary. So if you have a chance, it's on my website. I think you'll enjoy it. It starts, my section starts 15 minutes in as the second half of the documentary, the half hour. And with that, I just would open for questions. And thanks for indulging me in listening about my work.